Hey, yeah, what's up? This is Disciple Marcello Kearns, reign back up in this anti-Illuminati all day, anti-telepathy all day, anti-America all day, anti-cop all day, and everybody with them, yeah. So, this video is going to be about how in slavery, the African chiefs were selling slaves to the Europeans. The African chiefs were selling slaves to the Europeans. See, I have to make a video like this because people need to know that Africans were selling out Africans from the very beginning. Some of these kids might not know because you don't have one movie really showing the real truth of African chiefs selling African slaves to Europeans for monies and goods. Okay, so there was never no time where you could say, well, we were all together. Not as far as this situation. They were selling us off. That's how I got here. Some African chief sold me off, sold my bloodline off. That's how we got here. Yeah, you found somebody to know the real history. So we were selling each other out from the beginning. From the beginning, we were selling each other out. What's worse? Somebody who is opinionated here in America or concerning their own people, being black people, or some African chief that sells his own people into slavery to go across a whole ocean. Probably knew that part. Probably knew where they were going, or attempting to go. In their case, well, they probably already been there. Well, maybe, yeah. Well, they took trips, so at some point they did know, and they did probably inform the African chiefs what they were doing. They informed them of what they were doing. Okay, so they were basically a part of why the cruelty of slavery. People say, well, African slavery was so harsh. Black people, these historians will get on TV and say, well, it was so harsh and you just have no idea what they went through. Well, maybe I don't, but you know what I do know? The African chiefs helped it all happen. Let's applaud them, yeah. Let's applaud their legacy. As an African chief that sold his own people into slavery multiple times. So, so for white America, it's normal for someone that is as educated as I am to realize that we have never been on each other's sides anyway. You got African chiefs that can sell his people to a man that's 20 times lighter than him. That's strange in itself. Knowing you ain't going nowhere near where you at, and you have no compassion, and you rather have goods and monies and instead of your own people going away with this man 20 times lighter than you. 20 times lighter than you at that point, because you remind you there was probably no mixing back then. so he was 20 times lighter than this guy. That should have been strange. Like where you should have thought, well, okay, looking at him, where are they going? They going somewhere way off somewhere. You know that. Just looking at his complexion, you know they're going way off somewhere. Okay? And this is what needs to be put in movies, because what they show in movies, you cut off half of the whole story. You start here and show the white man over the Africans. You don't start at the very beginning. I thought a movie should start with the very beginning of any story. We should start at the very, very beginning, right? I'm not being a simplistic person feeling this way, right? Any story, history should start at the very beginning. That's the only way you're going to know how to define what this history that you're trying to project is if you show what happened in the very beginning. Because, see, this fits a certain narrative, these slave movies, and this is fitting for Black History Month. You need to know this. These movies that you're going to probably sit up and watch, even Roots, all of y'all going to sit up and watch Roots and all of this and watch these things and watch these projections of what you call African American slavery here, the Atlantic trade slave situation, the Atlantic trade slave situation. The Atlantic slave trade situation, that's what you're going to look at. You're going to look at that, but they're not going to show you the whole story, which is the chiefs sat back and watched his people float off on the water and turned his back and went on about his business. What movie can you show me that happens? Can you show me any movie where they show the very beginning, where the African chiefs takes and receives money and pushes the people off into the hands of the white man? This is how it happened, folks. For you little kids, this is how it happened. They didn't just pop up here. They were not ambushed as you would think. Oh, they went over there and they were ambushed. That's what you think. That's what you're left to think. Because who would just willingly become a slave? So you just think that they had to take the slaves by force. They did not many times take them by force. The bulk of the times, people would say, they did not take them by force. Every once in a while they may have, because they had guns and all of that. They may have. But for the bulk of the time, the chiefs were trading them off, these souls off, these humans off, to be slaves for Europeans. Let's get if you're going to tell the whole story, that's what I'm saying. Half truths almost equal whole lies. Because you're not telling the part that's important so we can know the nature of our own people. Your own people will sell you off, even here. Sell you off to slavery. Sell you off to the white man. Sell you off and sell you out. They ain't changed a bit. And I'm telling you who it is. It's the people that's active with the white man. You don't see me one hand in hand with the white man, now do ya? Now do ya? You hand in hand with the white man doing white man operations. You might as well be trying to be a chief selling off the African slaves. Okay? This is the part of history no one tells. These stories don't tell you. These movies, watch these movies. They always start off at the plantation. Like that's just where it started. That's how it started. This is the beginning, and it's not the beginning. The beginning is when Europeans went over to Africa. That's the beginning. Why you ain't showing that part? Because it doesn't fit the right narrative for you. You want to show how bad slavery really was without showing how the African chiefs selling off Africans. That's how bad it really was. That's the baddest part. That's the worst part. And yet you're trying to show how bad it was without adding the worst part, which was the Africans were selling off their own people. That's the worst part. If you showed that, man, that's the worst part. That's the most interesting part. Wow. Selling off his own people. We never grew up knowing this. I had to get old enough to find this information out for myself. I didn't know that. Most of you who are educated do know. But here's the kicker. You don't inform and you don't add this information in when you start talking about it. Yeah, you know it. You know about this part, but guess what you don't do? You don't add it in. You don't add it in to the information. When you're talking about the history of the African American slavery, you don't talk about the chiefs selling off the African slaves. You don't tell them that. You don't tell them how brutal that must have been and how betrayed these Africans must have felt looking at this African chief selling them off. Just imagine how betrayed they felt looking at the chief now. Not some other little scruffy guy. The chief selling them off. Can you imagine how the slaves looked at him? Can you imagine how the African slaves sold off looked at this man? Like, I can't believe this jive time turkey. Selling us off, man. This jive time turkey, man. I don't see how they people stayed under that chief. You wouldn't get me to stay under you. You selling out your own people, selling your people into slavery? Sure, I would leave that village. I'm sorry. That would be the end of our family affair. But yet, this is the history. This is the history, folks. And white people, some of you white people don't even know this. Y'all don't know this. Yeah, those Africans were treated so bad by their own people. Got sold into slavery by their own people. You know that part? Don't hear you talking about it. You got everything else to say, but you ain't talking about that part though. That's why I don't deal with flaky people. You know, you want to tell some of the story, tell all the story. Tell the whole story of any story. So that we can all see what it really is. And you know what? When you find that part out, you realize all of this has been happening because of human nature, which is subject to greed and money and all these things. You see an African chief feel that the goods and money is worth more than his own people? What that tell you? What does that tell you? It tells you from the very beginning, we have been selling each other out. We have not cared about each other. There was never no unity, this love thing going on. So now you can understand why it's not working now. Now you can understand why it can't work, because it never did. And so you can stop acting like you are these humble people that would never do this and never do. You were selling each other out from the beginning. Let alone what you done turned into now. And when you understand this, you would then begin to put forth the real effort to become better people. But you have it in your mind that the white man's the only one that wronged you. And he sit back and let you tell it. Yeah, I'll let him say that. I'll take it. But a lot of the white educated men say, I'll take it, but you know what? I also know that we had some help by them African chiefs over there. He was more interested in the money than his own people. And so we'll let these Negroes tell their story. We'll let them tell it like they tell it. But we all know that these African chiefs definitely were working hand in hand and was definitely were like our counterparts. They were our counterparts to helping this all possible. They were our counterparts. They were our co-workers. These African chiefs. So we'll let these Negroes tell the story like, white people were just doing all of this. Meanwhile, we know the full story, which is the African chiefs were co-working with us to make it possible. And what you gonna say? What you gonna say? Oh, well, what? Nothing. You can't say anything. All you can do is look and say, well, we hope things get better. That's all you can do. But you can't fool people like me who know better. I know you've been selling each other out from the beginning. I know you try to look for sellouts, but you've been selling each other out from the beginning. So what you expect to be here? Love? It never been. It's never been. They may, as far as the African American people, they may have had little intermissions in slavery when they were together. Other than that, it has never been no full love thing, love community. I'm trying to show people false realities. Things that have never been true, ideals, yet they have never manifested. You have never ever had this come to pass. This has never come to pass. Just like white people helping Africans. That has never come to pass. They have never wholeheartedly helped Africans. We need the truth. We need the fullness of the truth. And people need to know, okay? African Americans, yes, they were brought here not only by Europeans, they were brought here also by the help of African chiefs, which is worse, the people that's over them, that seen them born. They probably seen half of those slaves born. You know they did. You know they did. Probably held them up, had celebrations and ceremonies for the children, and then sold them into slavery later. Come on, you know if he was a chief, man, they had some kind of ceremonies for the children. He seen these kids grow up. He seen these people grow up and then sold them into slavery. That's worse than the Europeans, because the Europeans had no connection, emotional connection with these people sold into slavery. He had no connection to them at all. There was no sentimental value on these people. There was no care, no history, nothing like that he had. No times of struggle and then, you grow closer because you've struggled together. None of that. No history with these people. And yet the man that does, the overseer of all of them, turns from sentimental feelings, history that he has with his own people, and sells them off to a man 20 times lighter than he is. 20 times lighter than the complexion, which means obviously strange. And where they're going is probably going to be strange. That's who you look at. And it's no different than now. It's who you look at now. The people shooting up each other, killing each other. You're more familiar with that community than the white cop that kills you. You're more familiar with the man that shot your kid than the police. You know who he is in some cases. Most of you do. When you live in the same neighborhood, you know exactly who killed you. You know his family and everything. And yet he knew your family and he did not consider your child. These police don't have most of the times no connection with your children. And yet you don't fault the people who do have connection with your family and children and your culture and your music and your entertainment and your lifestyle and your struggle. And you don't tell that part of the story, no different than you don't tell the part of the story of the African chiefs that had more connection to you as a people in every form and fashion, had history with you, knew your culture, knew everything about you, and still sold you off in slavery, sold you off into slavery, and the white Europeans had no connection with you, but yet you hold him more responsible when we talk about slavery. I hold the African chiefs just as responsible. Because you knew the people you were selling them into slavery. How is this a sellout when he was the sellout from the very beginning? We're here because of an African sellout. Let's keep it 100. We're here right now. If you're African in America, you're not here because you just floated to be here. Not all of us. Most of us are here because an African chief found your family to not be valuable. Okay? You're here with the help of Africans. You don't want to hear it, but yeah, it's the truth. It's the truth that Martin Luther King Jr. didn't emphasize. It's the truth that Malcolm X didn't emphasize. It's the truth that none of these leaders emphasize. None of them emphasize this. But this is what made it possible. You are here literally because of the energy of an African chief selling you out like a curse. And you sitting up looking for the sellout. You are a product of the sellout. In other words, you are here looking around because of a sellout. You are here based on sellout situations. Yeah. You're here because of sellout situations. Who you gonna look to? Who you gonna fault? That's a joke. Who you gonna fault? When the ones that knew you best is the ones that sold you out. You can't look at the mean. You can't look. I'm telling you the truth. If I hit below the belt, hey, you definitely did the same. I tell you that. You definitely did the same, partner. I had a black man call my mom a nigger. A black man. Yeah, what you gonna say to that? You know what all the white people and all the people gonna do? Oh well, it ain't everybody. But when you hear something I say, it's the whole world falls apart. But when I tell you an African called my mom a nigga, you ain't got nothing to say. Nah, then I have nothing to say with your complaints. Okay? That's how that works. Ain't nobody playing but you. Yeah. I had another African man tell me to go back to my own home country. Well, maybe I never had to leave if an African chief didn't sell my bloodline out. Maybe I would have never left in the first place if it wasn't from some African. Okay? Let's keep it 100 here. Ain't nothing wrong with me. This is the truth. How is something wrong with me? I'm telling you the truth. Oh, because I don't just stick with you at all costs. Well, you don't stick with me at all costs either. Not by the looks of it. So what I supposed to do, be to a higher standard? Come on now, that's not reasonable. That's not reasonable among humans in this human world. You want me to be held to a higher standard and do all this and you do all whatever you want to do. Nah, that don't work like that. Now I could be the man that God wants me to be and have a better temperament towards you. But the temperament is not too bad now. You don't see me cussing nobody out in public. You don't see me saying nothing to nobody in public. I'm telling you the truth. Here, I'm telling you the truth. Now in public, you ain't, half of these publicans, if you will, they're not going to want to hear the truth. They're not going to be able to bear it. When I tell you the African chiefs sold you out, and you still looking for sellouts, and you're here on sellout circumstances. You're only here because of sellouts. So what sense does it make to look for one? Does it make any sense to me? You're here on sellout circumstances looking for sellouts. Well, you know what? You got a long way to swim. You got a long way to swim, partner. If you're looking for sellouts. If you're looking for the origin of sellouts, you got a long way to swim, buddy. And I don't think you're going to make it. And this is the part that is important because we then can see why. Because people acting like, well, I don't see why we can't get along. We never did. So you can conclude that human nature, it's all human nature. We never got along. Blacks were never, Africans were never good with each other. So that's what breaks the straw that breaks the camel back. All us as humans were never for each other. It's not just a white man. It's been you too. So that makes everyone. Don't take a brain surgeon to understand that, do it? If you've been selling each other out from the very beginning, that means humans it's a human problem. In other words, it's a human problem here. Okay? You can't trust no humans. You better off getting a whole bunch of animals and living on a farm somewhere. You can't trust no humans. Not even no Africans. So there is no African movements. Okay? Not to me. Not to me. Tell the whole story. Been selling each other out from the beginning. Got African chiefs, and they don't tell you that part in the movie. In no movies you watch, man. You watch any of these slave plantation movies. I don't care, 12 Years a Slave, Roots, what else other one? The ones about Harriet Tubman. Django. Anyone you want to look at, no one wants to tell the part that the African chiefs sold them into slavery. In fact, I think a whole movie should be made on it. Just that part. Show how they were all together in the beginning. All these ceremonies for the kids, and then in the movie, with the slaves going, the Africans going off into slavery with the Europeans. End it right there. And I guarantee you have a whole change of heart on how humanity really is. You'll have a whole different perspective on humanity when you start a movie showing how the whole movie is about the African chiefs selling out the Africans. And then at the end of the movie, you show that you show them all going into boats with the Europeans putting them on boats. That will leave an impact on you. That's what you need to show, man. You need to show that.